Hello everyone. In this video I'll be going over the export and import utility in Oracle databases. Every time you install an Oracle database, and the Oracle software to be more specific, it by default also installs the import and export utilities. This utility is used to export data from one database to another database, and these databases might be on the same server, or they might even be on completely different servers. So, for example, the client may come to you one day and ask you that they might tell you that they need a specific schema that's in the production server, and they need that schema in their dev database. So in order to fulfill those requests, you would use the export and import commands. Now, there are actually an infinite variety of possibilities, infinite variety of requests that the client may ask from you. They might ask you to export a schema. They might ask you to export a table. They might ask you to export an entire database, or they might even ask you to export just specific values from a specific table. And at the end of this video, I'll even be showing you how to essentially teach yourself how to handle all of these different scenarios using the help option in the export and import commands. But first, let me go over the one simple scenario that's on your screen right now. In this video, the scenario I'll be going through is exporting a specific schema, the HR schema, from the production database on this specific machine with this IP address, and then importing that schema into the dev database that's in a completely different machine with this IP address. And it's always a three-step process. Whatever request you get from your client, if it's concerning exporting and importing data, it's always a three-step process. Step number one is to first export whatever data they need. You export it from your production database to what's called a dump file. This dump file will be on the same machine. It will be created on the very same machine that the production database is situated in. And once this dump file with all your data is created, you would transfer it. Step 2 would be to transfer that data to the other machine, and you would do that with the scp command. And then the final step, step number 3, is to import the data from this dump file to your dev database. In simpler scenarios, step 2 might be unnecessary, step 2 where we use the scp command, because there might be a scenario where the client asks you to export data from a database in this machine and then import it to the very same database or another database in the very same machine. In scenarios like that, we would not need the scp command, which is, step 2 in this scenario. So here's the big picture. Next, we'll be going to the specific commands to accomplish these 3 steps. So here I have our 2 servers next to each other. Our production database is on the server with the color red, and our dev database is on the server with the color blue. These are their IP addresses. I'm going to log in. The first step is to export our data, which is done on the production side. So for now, I'll just be working with the red tab over here, and I'll be logging in as the Oracle user. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log into SQL Plus and make sure our database is online. And we do that with this SQL right here, open mode. Oh, it looks like it's not even up, so we're going to do startup open and just wait for that to start up. Our database is now open. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure our listener is up and running because I want to connect to this database from a SQL developer, because there are a couple things I want to show you. The first thing I want to show you is the specific schema that we're going to be exporting. The schema has a number of tables. Let's just reopen this. There we go. All the tables that belong to the HR schema can be seen with this command right here, this SQL. And so the HR schema has all of these. For simplicity's sake, I'll just be exporting this regions table. So I believe there are 6 or 7 rows over here. Great. So this is the specific table we're going to be exporting to our dev environment. If we go back over here, now let's log in. So step 1 is to actually export the data, right? Now, unfortunately, the Impdp and Expdp commands, they don't recognize file paths. So we need to find a way to tell these commands, to tell our utility where our dump file is going to be. And we do that by first mapping the file path to what's called a logical path, because these commands, the export and import commands, only understand logical paths. They don't understand file paths. The location I want to store our dump file is going to be the home directory for the Oracle user. So it's actually the current directory I'm in right now, home Oracle. I need to map this path to a logical path, and I do that with a query, which I'll be sharing with you right now. It's going to be create directory, and then you give your logical path any name you want. I'm going to call it my exports, and then we're going to mention which specific file path we want to map this logical path to. It's going to be the home directory for the Oracle user. Great. So we've created this directory. From this point on forward, anytime I mention this path to my Impdp and Expdp commands, I'm not going to be using the file path itself. I'm going to be using this alias, this logical path instead, because that's all that the utility will understand. And now we're actually ready to export this regions table from the HR schema. We do it with the expdp command, expdp, and then we mention the directory where we want to export it to, and we've already created this logical path, so that's what I'll be typing. And then inside of this logical path, we need to give the dump file that's generated a unique name. So I'm going to call it dump file, and then the name of your dump file, it usually has a specific format. We begin with exp, which means it's our exported data, and then we mention which schema the data belongs to, and then finally we mention the specific table, which is regions, and then finally we need to mention the extension. It's a dump file, so it's a DMP. We absolutely need to put the extension DMP here, because otherwise, when we're importing the data, it won't work. The import command will only import data from a dump file that has the DMP extension in it. The next parameter we need, these are all required parameters, by the way. The next parameter we need is log file. While the export is taking place, it's going to be logging to a specific file of your choice, and we're going to create this log file is also going to be created in this directory, the my exports directory, hr regions.log. And then the final required command is, the required parameter is tables. We're going to mention it's going to be the regions table. And this is it. It should work. Now I press enter. Unknown command beginning with, oh, we're in the SQL Plus utility right now. That's not what we want. The Expdp command is its own utility, so we first exit out of here. And then we paste it right there. Hit enter. And it's going to ask for a username. I'm just going to use the sysuser. And now it's doing its thing. It's starting the export. This might take, depending on how large your table is, it's going to take, it can take a really long time. It could take days, actually. But since our table is tiny, it should just take a few seconds. It looks like the operation is successful. Now, if we check all the files inside of our home directory, you'll notice that we have these two files that are generated, the log file. Let's take a look at what the log file says. It's essentially just telling us that it was successfully completed. It tells us the size of the regions table in the export dump file. And that's pretty much it, folks. We've completed step number 1. Step number 2 now is to export this dump file that's been created. We're going to export it to this machine over here using the scp command. The scp command just takes 2 arguments, the source argument and the destination. Our source is going to be the dump file that we've generated in our production server. So we type scp and then home Oracle, because the dump file is located in the home directory for the Oracle user. And then I just paste the name of my dump file over here. Paste. And then our destination is going to be, we're going to connect to the destination with the Oracle user at this specific IP address. And we're also going to mention the file path in the destination. It's also going to be the Oracle home destination. And the name of our dump file is essentially just going to be the same as in our source. And this is it. And I hit enter. It says, "Are you sure?" Yes, I am. Asking for my password. And there we go. Now, if we head over to our second machine, I'm currently in the home directory. If I press ls, there we have it. We have our dump file in our destination server, which has our dev database. And now we've completed step 2, and we're down to the final step, which is where we have to run the impdp command to import this. So here I am in our destination server, the tab in blue. I'm currently in the Oracle home path, and under this path we have the export dump file which we generated. This you can ignore. I was just playing around with a couple things, so I created that file. In fact, let me go ahead and just remove it. And there we have just our exported dump file. The command we use to import this is impdp, and then we mention which directory to import it to. My exports was the logical path that we created previously, and then the dump file is going to be this right here, which we are going to import from. Paste. And then the log file is another required parameter, and we'll call this imphr regions.log. And a new required parameter that's used by the impdp command is the table exists action equals replace. And this tells our utility to just replace any tables that already exist in our destination. So if we're importing a table, say our regions table, but let's assume a scenario where the HR regions table already exists in the destination, what this parameter says is to replace it. Okay? Now I'm going to press enter, and I know this is not going to work. So I want you to pause the video and just jot down a couple points for why you think my command, why this line is not going to work right now. Okay? Just jot down as many points as you can. I'm going to hit the enter button now. Boom. It's going to ask me for my username. There we go. It says HR does not exist. Now, when we exported our table in the source server, our regions table, it exported from the HR schema, and we're trying to import the HR schema regions table into this server. The problem is, as the error message says, the HR schema does not exist. So we need to create this user, SQL plus as sysdba. Okay, we're going to create user HR identified by my password 123. There we go. Now we have this user created. Now let's go ahead and rerun this. I know it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work. In fact, let me just clear the screen real quick. It's still not going to work. If you did predict that it was going to fail because of the HR user, great job. But it's still not going to work after creating the HR user. So, pause the video and try to take a guess why it still might not work. I'm going to press the enter key now. Okay, no privileges on tablespace sysaux. Okay. So in our dump file, the metadata for our dump file tells us that the HR schema's default tablespace is sysaux. Okay, and that's why when it's trying to import that table and that schema's table, it's trying to use the sysaux tablespace to save all the data files to. Now, it's actually really bad practice to save anything to the sysaux, so never do that. I just did that to make my life easy on the source server. Now, here in the destination server, we can do one of two things. We can either change the default tablespace of my HR user to sysaux. Currently, by default, when you create a new user, the default tablespace is the user's tablespace. I can change that to the sysaux tablespace, but instead I'm going to, in fact, let's actually just make it users. So we will do alter user HR default tablespace user. I believe, SQL plus SSDA. It doesn't matter how many years of experience you have, you will always make that mistake. Okay, I believe it's I believe it's yelling at the fact that I got the name of the tablespace wrong. Oh, there we go. Okay, the tablespace is called users, not user. So we've altered it. Now if I rerun the import impdp command, do you think it's going to work? Nope, it's not going to work. But I'm going to try it anyway. All right, here we go. Object type table HR regions failed to create with error. No privileges. It's still yelling about the sysaux thing. Now, the reason it's still yelling out the sysaux thing, even though we changed the HR user's default table space, is that it's always going to save. It's always going to save the data files to the table space that's specified in the dump files metadata. Okay. The only way to get around that is to use a new parameter. Now the parameters that we used in the impdp command, we used directory, dump file, log file parameter, and the table exists action. But there are a whole bunch of parameters. And to see all of those, what you can do is you can run the impdp command with the help option. And this will give you a whole bunch of parameters that you can use. Streams configuration parameter, status parameter, service name, schemas. See this parameter, list of schemas to import. Interesting. So even if my export dump file had 100 schemas, I can specify which of those 100 schemas to import using the schemas parameter. Pretty awesome, huh? You can actually go ahead and you can take your time and read through all of these parameters. In fact, this is how you really master the import and export utilities, is by actually reading all these parameters over here and then playing around with it. The one I need, in order to find it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do impdp help, and then I'm just going to filter out these results to give me all the parameters that have the word map in it. Okay, so it looks like there's a parameter called remap table space and then remap table. This is the one we need, remap table space. So I'm going to rewrite our impdp command. I'm going to insert that remap table space parameter equal to, and then I believe it's, yes, equal to sysaux colon and then users. This is what I need. I'm going to hit enter. Let's see if it works. I believe it's going to work this time, but I may be mistaken. Let's see. sysdba no privileges on table space users. Okay. It looks like we need to make the default table space users. I believe, or it doesn't have a quota. We already made the default table space users. Let's give it some quota. sysdba alter user HR quota. Let's give it unlimited on users. Okay, now let's try that once again. Oh, I believe it's going to work this time. And there you have it, folks. It's working. So those are a couple things to keep in mind while you're importing data. You have to make sure the schema exists. You want to make sure you remap the table spaces accordingly. You also want to make sure the user has the required privileges on said table space. Make sure it's their default table space and that they have a quota to, save data files and whatnot to that table space. Great, it looks like we're done. Now, let's test it out. Let's go to SQL+. And then let us do a select. Let's see what mode my table is on, my database. Okay, it's in read-write mode, so let's do select everything from HR, and the name of our table was regions. There you go. We have successfully imported everything we need to import. Now, I also mentioned at the beginning of this video that there are an infinite number of requests that the client can make regarding what to import and what to export. You know, they might want tables, they may want the entire database. I've given you a very simple scenario, but this is honestly 80% of everything you need. The remaining 20% you are going to learn by, you know, going to the Expdp command and typing help, and then perusing all of these parameters. In fact, you know, you can, for instance, like this full parameter, you use the full parameter if you want to export the entire database. You know, estimate, if you want an estimate on how large your exported, you know, tables are going to be, you would use this parameter over here. A whole bunch of parameters. So the way you actually learn the whole export-import business is by playing around and you know, looking through all these parameters and coming up with your own scenarios. And that's how you really learn it, because if I were to teach you every single parameter on this list, this would be a very long series of videos. It would take hours and hours, at least 10 hours, I would say. So thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.